Part 3 of my interview with Damon Burton. Damon gives you the details on how to scale his content process so you can drive massive engagement and massive leads, all without taking all your time. And he gives us the most recent lessons he learned from Russell Brunson's last Inner Circle meeting and more. Enjoy this episode.
So the way that you can do this at scale, this started to work so well for me that it was taking up half my day. And so like I'd get up and I'd do my post on LinkedIn, and then part of this is go engage other people. Like when you comment on somebody else's content, then they start to go, Mischa keeps showing up, maybe I should check them out. And then they start to look at your content, engage on your content. So there's a little bit of engagement that you kind of reciprocate to draw attention to yourself. And that started taking 2-3 hours a day. I was spending like my first 2 or 3 hours every morning on LinkedIn, and it sucked because it's like, well, what do I do? Because this is working, but I don't want to spend 2 to 3 hours a day on LinkedIn. So what I did is I documented the processes and I hired a full-time person. And what I said is, look, for the first 30 days, do nothing. I'm going to pay you just to watch. And so for the next month, I would continue to do my thing. I'd make my posts. I'd engage, and I wanted them to absorb my personality. So all my content is still my content. I still write it, still gets published and everything like that. But where they helped me, and where this comes back to your question, if I see pushback or not, is now they help me moderate the comments and engagement. So they go through and look at everything. And each morning when I wake up on Slack, they send me a message and they say, go spend your time here. So I no longer look at every LinkedIn private message. I no longer look at every comment. I only look at the ones that are worth my time. So if anybody's out there, saying anything negative or whatever, I don't see it anymore. So my team just tells me where I can give an answer and provide value, or where somebody had a personal reply and I can start to foster a relationship with them.
That's amazing. If I just heard you correctly, you said you hired somebody to sort of manage your LinkedIn flow or process or engagement, and you paid them for 30 days just to watch what you do, to learn your style.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing. So my question is, are you still writing your post every morning, or so what's your process now that you have this person that's in effect, knows who you are, is you, or I don't know how we want to say that, but
yeah, I still write everything because like your point earlier about authenticity, I still wanted it to be my voice and my story and my journey. So I still write everything. I just queue it up in Trello. So you mentioned Facebook too. So I'm more natively just on Facebook first. So most of what you see on LinkedIn, I first posted on Facebook. So I write absolutely everything, but then I'll put it in Trello and I'll put it in queue. And then that team member knows the 6:30 to 7:30 window, knows what to do from there. But anything I've ever posted is still entirely me.
I love it. And so your team is helping you manage the engagement. They're like, hey, here's the key engagement for you to respond to, or are they also saying, hey, here's some type of posts that you like, why don't you go look at these and comment on those as well?
No, not necessarily. So on my content, they'll go through my private messages, they'll go through the comments, just like on any social media platform. There's sales pitches and things like that. So I tell them, I'm like, never send me a sales pitch, never forward me. So I wake up every morning and there's just a list of links in Slack that they send me, and they're a mix between comments and private messages. They filter through all the crap and they only send me the things that are true questions, true comments, opportunities for engagement, opportunities to give value. Like if I make a post about something technical with SEO and somebody's like, well, how do you do this one part? Then they message that to me and they go, Damon, go tell these guys how to do that one part. So they just filter through everything. Now on the engagement for other people, they do help me with that because, like I said, that was taking hours a day, but that's the part I told them to watch. And so what I did is with all parts of your business, you have to document your processes. And so even on my engagement, I gave them an outline. I said, don't comment on anything political. Don't comment anything religious. Don't comment on anything taboo, because that's how I engage. I don't want to get involved in the political things and the religious discussions, because those are discussions that you can't win. And
Right.
they're also discussions that don't contribute to the precedents I'm trying to set in Damon being a business and a family man. Now, if that's not to say that those are right or wrong. If that's your thing, there's a lot of opportunity. If that is your thing,
Love
do
it.
the opposite. But what I did, that's part of the 30 days where I said, watch, notice how I engage with people, notice the type of vernacular and verbiage I use, notice things I do and I don't comment on. So in our project management system, I have a daily reoccurring task that says, go view Damon's engagement and do and don't engage on these types of things. So it's documented, but then for those first 30 days, they could actually see the documentation playing out in real life.
I love that. Thank you for that. Facebook, is that all you, or if or is that your team handling some of Facebook as well?
On the comments, oh,
Yeah.
Facebook's entirely me. Yeah, my team
Okay.
doesn't do anything on Facebook. Yeah, it's just LinkedIn at scale in the comments is all on LinkedIn. Yeah, so everywhere else is me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. And I was checking out but obviously Facebook. I already said I love your content. But I noticed this morning as I was doing a little stalking, I was like, oh yeah, you got a blog and the rest, some of your other content.
Mm-hmm.
But that sort of the Facebook post is a micro piece of, like, on your blog, it might be the full article perhaps, or there's some of that going on. So I noticed that it was
Mm-hmm.
pretty cool, sort of this you could sort of see your, I don't know, your life, or however you want to say it, what you're up
Mm-hmm.
to across your platforms. But perhaps your
Mm-hmm.
blog is a bit more I don't know, what am I trying to say? Am I making sense?
Yeah, sometimes the blog's longer form. Usually the way the majority of my content rolls out is there's something that's on my mind. Most of the stuff I publish is something I wrote right then. I as much as I like to pre-plan and write content, I just don't have the time anymore. And so most of the time I publish something, it was drafted right before I published it. So that tends to natively go to Facebook first, and then from there I might, as I'm typing it up and then I publish it and I start to see some of the feedback in the comments, then I'll take it to my blog, and sometimes I'll extend it and go into more deeper detail. Because there's a different attention span on blogs versus social media. So social media is like, get to the point. The blog, I might be able to have links out to resources and explain deeper, which you can't do on, Facebook. You can't have multiple links of within, subsections of your post. So I might go deeper on the blog. And then when it comes to like LinkedIn is almost entirely something I publish first on Facebook. And then when it gets to other platforms, like just yesterday, my team launched a YouTube account for me. So what they do on YouTube is, it might be a conversation like this, or they'll send me some questions that they've gathered that the market is kind of asking, and then I can bring some of my experience to, and then I'll record it. They'll format it, make it look pretty and things like that. So YouTube is obviously me on camera and this and that, but my team builds it out. Instagram is largely that. I'm not personally active on Instagram, but they've started to take a lot of these types of podcasts and discussions and chop up little clips and segments from it. So I'll kind of oversee and be like, okay, I do and don't like this type of style, this type of branding. Is it congruent? But Facebook and LinkedIn is me. Instagram and YouTube is the team pulling the content together.
Yeah, cool. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that process. Uh, I want to make sure to touch on, so I think it's, and you alluded to this a couple times, this idea of adding value, and that's elusive to me
Mm.
as I record this, right? Or, there's this idea of document the process, right? And that can be an elusive concept. Literally, I was talking to Vince, Vince,
Green.
Coach Vince, yeah, Vince Green, and I was like, "Hey, Vince, what? Let's just document the process. I need more clarity." And he's like,
Mm.
"Pull out a pen and a paper and write down the notes." And I was like, "Okay." I mean, it's
Yeah.
just very funny. Or so I think adding value, again, like, that's an elusive concept for me. Perhaps some of my listeners right now. Could you, like, how are you, like you say, I add value, I lead with value. So what does that mean to you, or what's your formula for that? Or
Mhm.
yeah.
There's not so much a formula. So we can talk about value and we can talk about documentation. So on the value, it's going to be counterintuitive. What what you want to do is everything you get paid for, give it away for free.
Okay.
So that goes back to what we were saying about the three types of content consumers. Now, what you do is basically whatever your expertise is, figure out a way to communicate that to an audience. So in my case, like the page speed thing we talked about earlier. So over the course of optimizing a website, there's our documentation at my agency has a 200-point checklist. That's 200 things that I can talk about. So no one's going to want to sit there and listen to like a 10-hour video of me going through all 200 things. But what I can do is I can do a whole lot of 1 to 10 minute things. So the type of person, like the chances of somebody digging through all of my social media profiles across different platforms and different podcasts and piecing together all 200 of those things is next to impossible. And then it goes back to that thing like, well, even if they did, good on them, because now I just helped somebody. But that's the type of person that would have never paid me anyway. They're trying to string this together. So figure out the individual tasks that you do and the services that you offer, and those become little value added bite-sized pieces of content that you can give on different platforms. So you can take your processes and type that into a post on Facebook. You can take that same thing that you just typed out on Facebook and turn it into a video on Instagram. You can take that same thing that was text and now a video and turn it into an image on Pinterest or LinkedIn. So you can find different ways to repurpose the content. So earlier you mentioned the book, right? My
Yep.
book is the entirety of our company's processes. And I give it away for free because if you want to sit there and read a 100-something page book, good on you. Like, go implement it. And I'm not going to lose anything because you wouldn't have paid me anyways. But now you're going to go rave about my book. Now you're going to rave about my processes. So giving value is just giving away tiny chunks of your expertise without asking for anything in return.
So good. Thank you for that explanation. I love that. And again, the book, Outrank. Tell people where they can get it again, quick.
freeseobook.com.
Awesome. And it's Outrank, how to get consistent and unlimited traffic, turn off ads forever, excuse me, and track SEO results without waiting months to see progress. I love it, man. So that's your whole company process. I've got it memorized. I'm kidding. I want to, we're going to get to some about how you leverage your case studies here in a minute. And you said you have a new case study or some new information that we get to talk about. And then hopefully we can maybe continue. Before we went live here, we were talking a little bit about what I'm up to, and maybe we'll continue that conversation. And so some listeners can gather some insights if they're trying to, get more social proof or leverage social proof, because you're clearly good at that side too, and have access to people that are really leveraging their social proof via the inner circle or what have you. But before we get to that, I want to ask you, in 30 seconds or less for each one, give me the top insights or takeaways or aha moments that you've gotten over the last couple of months or from your last inner circle meeting at Russell Brunson's inner circle meeting. Like, what are your top takeaways?
Probably get out of your own way. A lot of the stuff, I mean, you can't see behind me, but right off to the side, about a foot over here out of frame, I have a stack of books of notes from each get together. So by now, being in it just over a year, we've had 6 in-person kind of things, and each time you get a book, and each time you can write in it. And I've implemented almost none of it, not because I don't want to, I just haven't had the time. And the reason why I tell you that is, I've probably turned that $50,000 investment fee into $500,000, and it's largely from getting out of my own way. And I already knew that. A lot of the listeners already know that, but I actually started implementing it. And just by doing that, we're able to scale faster. So we still don't do any lead generation. And all my stacks of books and notes are all the ways we were going to roll it out. So last year I hired a CEO, and so I've been transitioning everything over to him. So maybe I know you said 30 seconds or less.
No,
There's
keep
one
going.
thing
This is
we'll do.
gold. Go,
We'll,
go.
we'll do one more thing is so when like we built out this agency without doing any lead gen. So now all these notes I've been making is like, okay, now that I'm getting out of my own way and we're going to start to roll out this lead gen, it's like a lot of good opportunity. And so I kind of give you that background too, is because I came into that community a little bit opposite than a lot of other people. Because right now Russell is preaching, you don't have a business unless you have continuity. And so now the community is saying, well, I need continuity. So for me, I'm the opposite. I only know continuity. Like my entire model for 15 years has been a monthly reoccurring client. So there's been a lot of interesting validation where it's like, and what I mean by that is when you come into this world, you see so much success and you see people that have $1 million days. I think there's one person in there, the highest that I recall off the top of my head was a $4 million day in one day. And so it's like you see all these exciting things where they make a ton of money, but then it's like, okay, the opportunity to make that money is only when you're selling. And
Mm,
so you always have to come up with the next event, the next thing.
mm.
And so that's attractive. But then at the same time, there's nothing wrong with my agency. And so I've had to slow down and go,
Mm,
okay, before I chase all that cool, shiny stuff, make sure I don't fix what isn't broken with the
mm,
agency.
mm,
And
mm.
so at first it was a little bit stressful because I was like, gosh, everyone's doing such cool things. And I'm over here just like trying to not burn this ship down because there's nothing wrong with it. And so I don't want to run away from it and abandon it. And for the first 6 months, it was a little frustrating because I was like, I want to go do those cool things too. But then in the last 6 months, there's been that validation where the group is like, okay, we need recurring revenue and let's slow down and let's get some consistency and less dramatic swings. And so there's been like this interesting shift in momentum where everybody in the group is trying to find the best of both worlds. Like, how do we have the big paydays, but also do it predictably and consistently? So get out of your own way, and then don't get distracted.
I love it. You said steps to getting out of your own way. If I heard you correctly, you're like, I figured out steps to getting out of my own way. So,
Not necessarily steps, but if I had to, it would probably go back to the one thing we briefly touched on, which would be good to revisit, was documentation.
yeah.
Like your ability to get out of your own way and trust in your team and maintain quality control at scale is going to be as good or as bad as your documentation. So to document your
Mm,
process, as Vince is right, like you literally sit down and write down everything. So when I documented my process, it was probably 9 years ago, and it sucked. Like it took 2 to 3 hours a day, every other day for a year. I mean, granted, I have a more intricate process with lots of little things involved. But when I documented those processes, I never wanted to do it again. I didn't want to get through this over months or a year. It ended up taking about a year, but I didn't want to get through this process of months and months and months of investing in documenting processes. And then when I got done, go, crap, I need to redo that because I kind of half-assed it. And so I really took my time. And the way that I looked at it is document everything in a way that so granular that I could give this to a novice that has zero SEO experience and they still couldn't screw it up. So what you have
mm,
to look at your process is, what if it wasn't me that was reading this? Because we all have an expertise in whatever we offer. And so we take things for granted. And so as you're doing a process, you kind of just in one seamless motion do three things. But somebody new is only going to see one thing out of those three that just happened in that motion. They're going to miss the other two. So that's why I said your ability to scale is going to be dependent on how good or bad your documentation is. So you could compare people to like water, trying to find the path of least resistance. So your team isn't going to intentionally screw things up, but they may not see something that wasn't documented because they're just going down the path of least resistance. And so they're not going to go off that path if they don't have to. So you really have to document absolutely everything. And And the more you take it for granted, the more crucial it is that you document it, because that's going to be the tiny thing. It's not going to be a big thing that screws up your scalability. It's going to be a tiny thing. And it's going to be a tiny thing that has a compounding effect.
It's amazing. You said three things. They will see, there's three things to see, and part of your team might see one. Like,
oh, that was just metaphorically speaking. Like,
okay,
you are such an expert that you may do many things in one motion, but to somebody paying attention behind you, looking over your shoulder, they might not see those multiple things. They might just see, their perspective. Maybe Mischa did one thing, but really Mischa is such an expert that they just did three things.
love that. Thank you for that clarity. Quick, you hired a CEO. So was that a hard leap for you? Two things. Was that a hard leap for you? Where'd you find him?
Yeah, well, that's a good question.
Him or her? Yeah.
Yeah. I hired slowly. I had been needing a CEO for probably 2 years, but I didn't want to screw it up. So I kind of suffered through wearing multiple hats until I found the right fit. The way I found mine, unfortunately, it's not a way I can, you can just go copy and paste. But what I did is I found a gentleman that we actually had a mutual client. He was a freelancer, and that company that was paying him hired my agency, and we had an onboarding call with him, and I could quickly see his work ethic and his clarity and his skill set. And in return, he saw our transparency, and we developed a mutual respect for each other. And then this client ended up kind of screwing both of us, and we just kind of stayed in touch. And he lives in Southern California. I often go to Southern California. It's like a 90-minute flight for me. So I'll do what I call day trips. I'll take a 6 a.m. flight out, especially in the winter. So, as the time we're recording this, we're heading into winter, and the gray clouds and skies, like, I just need a little break. So I'll catch a 6 a.m. flight to San Diego, but then I don't want to be away from my wife and kids. So I'll catch a 6 p.m. flight back the same day. So I'll go fly, hang out at the boardwalk, hang out at the beach, bring my laptop, work for 8 hours, and come home. And so I knew he was in Southern California. And so we met up for coffee one day and just kind of further established the relationship. And then one day, he was talking about freelance life. And I said, well, do you want a little bit of our overflow? I could probably have you do a little thing here and a little thing there. And so then I got to further see what I had saw earlier was his skill set and his work ethic. And I continued to appreciate that. And then he continued in return to appreciate the clarity and transparency and how the agency operated. And then one day, I still remember very clearly, I was just walking in my front yard. I was just kind of pacing around and thinking about the CEO role. And I went, gosh, why don't I just ask him? Because he has a skill set, he has a transparency. He's wanted to get out of freelance life because he didn't want to chase different clients that would or wouldn't pay invoices and things like that. And so we could kind of solve each other's problems. And so I called him up and I said, hey, do you want to leave freelance world and have something that's more consistent? And so he came over and started as like a project manager, and everything worked well. So I said, why don't you just kind of start taking over all of it?
It's amazing. It's amazing. Well, congratulations on that step and finding someone that's compatible with your vision or whatever, in alignment, I guess, with your values and all that. That's beautiful. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Table Rush Talk Show. For resources to help you sell your stuff, go to belove.media/resources. That's belove.media/resources. And be sure to subscribe, comment, 5-star, and share. Thank you again for listening.